Are you a successful IT professional and need help optimizing your compensation plan, navigating your taxes, investments, and protection? It's time to rewire and retire with Mike. Listen in as Mike gets you the answers you need to move forward. Now, on to the show with Mike.
Hello and welcome to Rewire and Retire with Mike Guarino. Mike, how are you?
I'm well, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm a little sad. We're at the final steps here of our 5-part mini-series. I'm hoping that we have a lot more podcasts planned, do we? Please tell me we do.
Oh, absolutely. We got guests. We got all sorts of stuff coming. Absolutely.
Right on.
Yeah.
All right. I heard there might even be a presidential candidate.
Yeah. Who knows?
Who knows?
It's just, I don't know is there going to be an election? I don't even know.
I just say that because I think anybody at this point that's going to be on your podcast as a guest could be a pretty good presidential candidate, because what I'm looking at right now, not so good. Just saying.
I think we should join forces and we'll run. Me and you.
Oh, Lord. Here we go. Everybody, we're putting in our pit. No, we're not. We're going to do a podcast about the benefits of financial planning, not presidential planning. How about that?
Very
Can we do
good.
that?
I love it. But
right.
I'll go. You said something earlier. You said it's sad, and I thought you were going to. I thought you were going to say it's sad because we're already in August, and my birthday's in August, and every time my birthday, thank you. It's coming up in a couple weeks. Thanks.
All right.
But every time it gets to this time of year, you see all the school, back to school ads on TV. I thought that's what you were going to say you were sad about. I get sad in August. I'm like, oh my God, the summer's almost over, and I got all this stuff I didn't do yet.
Well, I hear that, but no, it's all about this 5-part miniseries. We're covering step 9 and 10 today.
We're nailing it down, so we're finished with that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get to it.
Sure. So we covered 1 through 8, and now we're going to jump into 9 and 10. I'll tip my hand a little bit here. 9 is, having a financial plan can help you build wealth, and that sounds like overstating the obvious. But I've read CFP studies that show people who have a plan are, more likely to save and pay attention to their expenses, specifically around credit cards. So even people who have credit card debt, that shouldn't stop people from doing a financial plan. As a matter of fact, doing financial plans oftentimes helps us figure out what debt to tackle first. So even people coming into a financial planning meeting with us, I don't have the money to do X, Y, or Z because I have all this credit card debt, or some people just had bad luck. Their car broke down, or they had to buy something new that just really pegged them on the credit card. But working with advisors who do planning is, I believe, is just a giant way of getting your ducks in a row, because we can help you. We know which ones to tackle first and what kind of techniques to use to eliminate the debt over time and also stop accumulating the debt. So a lot of techniques, it's just a little bit of adjustment can get people snapped right on track. And I think that goes kind of unspoken because most financial plans are looking towards the future and retirement, and debt is something that's present right here, right now. And you have to be able to eliminate or whittle away that debt over time, as well as concentrate on savings and growing your assets and protecting your estate. So there's a lot of components to it, and really credit card debt gets us involved in budgeting more so than planning. But I just pointed out, Eric, like a lot of times, pretty obvious, right? You see somebody with 3 credit cards and you're like, well, why do you have 3? You always want to have a conversation. And they'll tell you like, oh, this one was for the shore house and this one's for this. And I use that one because I get points at Costco or something like that, right? I'm guilty as charged on the last one.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah, but I pay it off every month, which is, I'm blessed that I do that. I don't spend more than I'm making, thank God. But people find themselves in a spot every now and then. I get that. So the obvious thing is to tackle the debt that has the biggest interest rate payment. In other words, you might have a credit card from ABC company that's charging you 25%, and you might have another one that's only charging you from XYZ company charging you 10%. Well, doesn't it make sense to start chopping away at the one that's charging you more interest, and then we'll get to the one that's charging less? Even better case scenario, a lot of times you can get those 0% credit cards that they're always offered everywhere, basically, and you consolidate it, right? You take the ones with the high interest payments and you scrunch them all down onto one credit card that has 0 interest. And that's a great, great way of getting ahead of the curve of debt. Now, I know we're talking about debt and all this other stuff. So, how does a plan help me build wealth? Well, the very first obstacle we tackle in planning is rainy day funds and then tackling any debt. So, there you go. That's why we're talking about debt right now.
Yeah, Mike, it's interesting that you bring all that up because I have a family member who ran into a really tough situation. And it's interesting because it was right around 08, 09. And of course, that was the bad time. Well, in 09, there's something called the Credit Card Act of 2009. But before that, this is what happened to him. He had 7 credit cards, and he always paid his bills on time. And he managed everything really well. And he made a good income from a pension, really good income. However, I mean, he loved to shop on TV and all that stuff. And so, but he was handling it. The problem is that back in 08, when everything started to go really sour, all 7 of those credit card companies raised his interest rates on his cards. And they did it, and they were allowed to back then, before the Credit Card Act came out. They were allowed to do it. And I think, and don't quote me on this, but I think it was like a 30-day notice that they had to give is all. And of course, how much junk mail do you get? And even if you do get a 30-day notice that they're raising your rates, how likely are you going to be able to pay off 1, 2, 3, 7 credit cards so you don't have a problem? Well, he went from 8 or 9% because he had outstanding credit, 8 or 9% on a lot of those cards. Some of them jumped up to over 20%.
Oh, it's incredible.
Immediately he got himself in a bind because then he could not make those minimum payments. He could not make the payments that he was used to. And he got in a world of hurt debt-wise, and it snowballed from there. So long story short is that he had to make some major changes in his life to even tackle just the current debt that he had, and his credit took a huge hit because he couldn't make all the payments on time, and it was a bad scenario. So some of these things just really, really resonate, and people don't know that. And now there are some things that will protect consumers, but there's still situations where your rates can be changed. So it's always something to note.
It's a good point too, because you brought something up that like people don't always understand percentages, right? Like 15%, 20%, 30%. That doesn't sound like a lot, right? So I always bring it back to, well, what does it mean if you look at a dollar bill? 30% interest on a credit card. Let's just say 25% interest of a credit card. Okay, that means every dollar that you're putting towards the principal, 25% or 1/4 of that dollar bill is getting ripped off that just goes to interest. So you're only getting 75 cents worth of spending on the dollar. And I find it effective when you put it in terms of that people understand, like, okay, so 25% is a lot. And I'm like, yeah. And if you're just paying the minimum, the minimum is just to satisfy the interest in a way at the debt that you've accumulated on the card. So yeah, especially in that situation, 2008 to 2009, when the market just took it in the neck from the subprime mortgage crisis, that was rotten. And thank God that they came out with that regulation, because, like you said, you're going from 10%. Okay, that's not as bad, to 20 or 25 or maybe even higher. That makes it insurmountable for you to get ahead of, unless you have some sort of windfall come your way.
Yep.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, Eric. I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, and he was able to get out of it, and this is something we can cover in a future podcast, I'm sure, but he was able to do a reverse mortgage, which wasn't ideal, but for him, it worked really, really well, and he was able to cancel all his debts in that fashion, and now he's very happy and stress-free, and that's the biggest thing, right, is the stress that all that stuff causes. And I think that's actually kind of leads into your next point, right? I mean,
amen.
Right? It can help you live more comfortably. Planning can really help you live more comfortably. And if you have a good plan and you're following that plan, then I think that's a lot of what it does, is reduce the stress. At least it does for me.
Yeah, and I'll tie it into this. That's a great point, Eric, and thank you for bringing it up. Right? So what just happened this weekend, the SpaceX shuttle, or whatever you call it, landed, right? They came in splashdown. They landed again. And I always tell people when we sit down and talk about finance, especially for financial planning clients, if we're off by a little bit, if that rocket on the launching pad is, let's say we're trying to go to the moon, is off by just like 1 or 2 degrees, we're going to miss the moon. We're going to miss by a lot, because it's just that increment, that tiny bit over such a long period of time and such a long trajectory makes us miss our target. And when we do financial planning, just a little bit of techniques that we use and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I know we're doing your retirement plan. It looks good. Let's make it look better. Let's just take a person that's 45 years old. They've got about 20 years to go before they retire. And simple techniques, like we talked about with the credit cards before, that technique, right? Just consolidate, try to get zero interest. Little techniques like, hey, let's load up your 401k a little bit more. Let's defer a little bit more income. Let me show you what that looks like over time. Again, those little adjustments, those little strategies, those little techniques over time have a compounding to your benefit, compounding effect in your retirement savings, or they can if it's done right. And my point is, just little nipping and tucking can really make friends. Remember, if the rocket's not pointing right at the moon, it's not getting there. If you're off by a couple clicks, you can miss by a lot. So I find it's more just a couple little simple things to help clients get on track and get confidence in their plan. And once they have that confidence, yeah, they're more comfortable with their at least my experience shows they're more comfortable with their finances. And that's huge, because not only do they get that, but they get clarity, confidence, and comfort. Those three, I always kind of throw them out. And I say that to people when we first start. You're going to get clarity, confidence, and comfort. And they look at me like, they shake their heads no, or like, what the heck is this guy? What is he talking about? Yeah. And once you put the spade work in, once you dig down and do the plan and have them fill out the questionnaires and go back and just make sure all the data looks right, and then have the first review, and then make sure everything's hammered into shape and polished for the second time you get together, and then you have that reveal, okay, here's your plan. And they're like, okay, good. So we're not as bad as we thought, or, oh, we're better than we thought. And I'm like, yeah. And then we'll show them a scenario. I just did this with Rich, the newest advisor to join Guarino Wealth Management. Like minutes before I walked in to do the podcast, we were talking. This gentleman's retiring in about 20 years. And, we said, he's got a good scenario. It looks great. His base case looks really, really good, meaning the stuff he told us and the stuff he's doing looks like it's going to work for him. So I said to Rich, I go, let's see what it looks like if we have him put just another 3% into his 401k. And that 3% had a ginormous impact on his end-of-life numbers, meaning at the end of the road, when the great Lord takes us, right? And we don't control that number. It's an actuarial number. So everybody says, can you make me live longer? I can on paper, but I don't know what really happens. But when we look at that end-of-life number, it's significant, and you're only talking about an additional 3%. Okay, Mike, what does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. It means even if he didn't put that 3% away in a 401k and just found another way to save it, yes, you get the tax deferral, I get that, but just another way to save it. So initially, he didn't want to pay for his child's education in full because he didn't think he could. So once we showed him that, or once we're going to show him that, I should say, once Rich showed me that, I'm like, wow, this guy's going to love what we're showing him. Because like I said earlier, a lot of times people are doing the right things. It's just minor adjustments and just little things that you can show them along the way that have a significant impact over time. And that's really what we're talking about.
Well, and here's the thing. This is why you work with a professional. And I'm gonna tell you an experience that I'm going through and I'm hoping to go through, Mike. I'll be honest, it's not set in stone yet because we have to work a few things out. However, refinancing is a huge thing right now, right?
Yeah.
And I have 2 homes, you know that. And we took some major hits we won't get into, but took some major hits. We're redoing the second home. It has not been rented for well over a year. A lot of repairs to be made. But we're getting ready because we're going to end up selling it here in the next year and a half or so. But I'd really like to take advantage of refinancing that home and the home that I live in. So started the conversation it was actually Friday, with a gentleman who's been doing this for about 18 years, works with a ton of different lenders. He's brilliant. And it was just a really interesting conversation because I'm a geek like that anyway, right? I mean, we talk about finance all the time. But he's able to do something, and I'm not going to quote the name of it, but there's a possibility that he'll be able to actually roll the other mortgage into the refinance for this mortgage, the home that I live in.
Yeah.
And so get this, my mortgage payment on the home that I currently reside in will be roughly $400 less per month than it is now, and I'll have the other house paid off. I won't have a mortgage on that one at all.
You got to love low interest rates, right?
It's insane, right? So And I would never have thought about that. Oh, and by the way, he's also going to roll in a couple little credit cards. I got a Best Buy card, that I bought some computers on. I got another line of credit. It's like $1,000, right? And then something else. He's going to roll all that in there too. That's possible to do that. I didn't know that. And so all that's going to be paid off. So I'm eliminating 3 different credit card bills or those bills. I'm eliminating another entire mortgage payment. And I'm lowering my current mortgage payment by $400.
All right. Here's the $1 million question, right?
Yeah.
Are you more comfortable about your finances now?
If it goes through, you better believe it.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're not just embellishing on point number 10. It's true, right?
No. And the thing is that it opens a world of possibilities for me, right? I mean, this is real life, real example. I'm thinking of all the things. Number one, I'm not going to go out and spend a bunch of money, but I have been needing a truck for a while, and I just haven't pulled the trigger on it because I don't want to have a $350 or $400 payment. I'm buying used, right? I'm not buying a new truck, which is $700, $800 a month. I'm talking a used truck, Mike. But here's the thing is I've been needing one, and I had to borrow my father's a couple times, which is great to be able to do that. But at the same time, I don't want to have to borrow his truck all the time. I've been needing one, and this will enable me to get one without having to stress about it, right? Not having to, that's another big payment on my plate. All these other things are going to be taken off my plate, and so it frees up the funds to do that. Plus, it also enables me to put a whole lot more toward my retirement, which I haven't been able to do over the last few years. I've been putting some away, but not enough, and I know that, right? So, wow, I mean, it's going to be huge, and that's a game changer, and it's all because I consulted a professional that knows the strategies.
Right.
Because I certainly didn't.
I can't overemphasize that, right? Like, did I ever tell you my fishing story? I mean, you and I talk before we go online. We talk about hobbies and fishing and all that stuff. Did I ever tell you about my fishing story?
No, I don't think so.
I'll try to make it short for the sake of our listeners that may or may not like fishing. But here's the deal. I used to fish up at the Hudson River. Yeah, the Hudson River. Yes, there are live fish in the Hudson River.
And they're edible?
Never mind. Well, that's debatable. But I didn't eat. I would fish to catch fish and let them go. Right?
Catch and release. That's right.
Yeah. And way back in the day, they used to have the striper run. So these big striped bass that would come up the river to spawn, and then they swim back to the ocean. So it was usually in May. And I'll tell you, Eric, for I don't know how many years I was up there on my boat. I'd leave my marina, I'd go out there, I'd be fishing all day, and might catch a couple little ones here or there. I did this for 5 or 6 years, and then finally I'm walking back. I docked my boat one day. It was cold and rainy, and I'm like, I'm done. I was freezing cold. I was wet, and I walked by these guys congregating on the dock, and they're like, "Hey, you the guy that was here last year?" I'm like, "Yeah." "Were you the guy that was here the year before that?" I'm like, "Yeah." "How about like 3 years ago? Was that you?" I'm like, "Yeah, that was me." Now, it turns out these guys are the boat captains up there. And they saw me going through all these motions of trying to catch fish. And they finally said, "Well, how you making out?" I said, "Not good." "Have you caught any over 20 pounds?" I'm like, "No." "Have you caught any, at 15? I'm like, "No, I catch little fish very infrequently." So they bring me inside the head captain's boat, and we're starting to talk now. It's raining outside, and we're just having a good time, kind of introducing ourselves. And they're like, "Look, what are you fishing with?" And I showed them my fishing rig, and they're like, And they bring out their rig. "You got to fish with this. You got to do that. Change your bait, change your weight, change your line, change this, change that." These guys knew. These guys are the experts.
Yeah.
These guys, they charter fishing charters up at the Hudson River for striper season. They brought me into their inner circle. They showed me how the techniques that they were using produced fish. And guess what happened to my fishing experience since that meeting?
Oh, I'm thinking it's much better.
I caught massive fish, massive. And I'll tell you, Eric, I was only doing maybe 3 or 4 things wrong. That was it. And they were so minor. And here's a guy, me. I was reading books on fishing. I would listen to the guys at the bait and tackle shop. I was into it. I mean, I did it. And, I still, without bearing much fruit, once I got with the experts, my life changed. Your life changed when you got with the expert about your mortgage, or it's going to, right? Yeah. Suddenly there's going to be a truck in your driveway that's virtually free because he freed up all that cash flow for you that you didn't have before.
Yeah.
So you're exactly right when you say the right person, right time can have a significant impact on the outcome of your finances, refinancing your debt, your financial plan, your fishing, right? It's amazing how working with experts can have such a profound effect. And I think it goes underrated.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be the biggest tip from today's podcast, folks. If you haven't included that listening now, it really, really can change the entire game for you. All right, Mike, I know we're getting kind of low on time, and it is that time again. Are you ready?
I am.
All right. So for those that are new to the podcast, Mike has a crystal ball. It isn't necessarily a magic 8 ball, but it's really close to that. And he's going to do us a favor and gaze into it now and tell us what he sees.
I see an election. We've talked about that. Hang on. Let me shake it again, Eric.
Oh,
Cue
please
it up.
shake it hard.
Cue it up. Cue it up again. I'm
Okay,
shaking.
here we go. Shake, shake, shake.
I am. All right. I got something now. It's the end of the summer. Enjoy the weather. That's it. That's all I got.
That's it. Yeah.
That's all I got.
That's
I'm
much
trying
better
to
than
get
the first view. I'm glad you shook it
Let me
again.
try one more shake. One more shake real quick. See if I get anything.
All right.
It says try again later.
Okay.
All right. Never mind.
Next podcast. Next podcast, folks. Yeah. I think that what we need to do is we need to bring out a big black blanket that we can just throw over that. The closer we get to November, the less I want to see that stupid ball.
I just, unfortunately, I don't watch the market all day. I just put it on to just get an idea what the futures look like and what the morning's going to look like. But you just can't. They're like conflated now, the market and politics. So I just can't get away from it. And I'll tell you, man, it's just, I don't care win, place, or show. I just want to do my thing, and I don't want to be involved with all this. So I just, I'm with you. Let's just throw a big black blanket over it and wake up November 4th and just be on the other side of it and just keep doing our thing.
Yeah. That's pretty much where I'm. Hey, do you remember that ice bucket challenge thing that was going around for a while?
I do.
Yeah, I kind of want to get back to that where I just take the ice bucket and just wear it. Just put it on and not even look at anything else. Just whether and it would be nice if it was actually filled with ice water and that it would just kind of freeze me for a little while so I could come out the other side of this. Oh, good.
Well, now I'm going to challenge you on Facebook, and not for that, but for something else, because somebody just roped me into one of those challenges.
Uh-oh, here we go.
I'll give you a clue. It's exercise.
Oh, Mike. Why you got to do that to me, man?
I'm sorry. Well,
All right.
all this money you're freeing up and the new truck, you got to look the part, man. So
Okay.
I'm trying to help you.
I look like a guy who owns a truck, let me tell you. Anyway.
Now you can be in shape and be that guy who
Oh,
owns the truck.
okay.
Come on.
Got it. All right. The lumberjack without
Help
the
me
gut.
help you.
Got it. I'm helping you. No, I'm letting you help me. Go ahead. What's this challenge?
It's 100 push-ups a day for the month of August.
For the month of August. And I'm already behind. So now what? I owe 400 push-ups? 500 push-ups already?
I'll let a couple days slide. You don't need them all, but 100 a day from the 3rd to the 31st, and you're good to go.
Good.
And you don't have to do them all at once, obviously. If you can only do 10 at a time, do 10 sets of 10.
Okay. Here's the thing: is that I'm going to have to motivate myself, right? I mean, that's what it's all about: motivation for change. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to put a bowl of ice cream on the floor. I'm going to push down, and I'm going to take a bite and push back up, and then swallow it. Push down. Does that work?
Awesome.
Is that okay?
The visual's great. I want to see the video.
Yeah. Problem is that after about 40 push-ups, muscle fatigue, and then I'm just face down in a bowl of ice cream or something.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah. It's the ice bucket challenge all over again with
There
ice
you
cream
go.
challenge. All right.
Excellent, man. Well, good luck.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the challenge. I will give you an update, and obviously I'll probably have to give an update on the podcast coming up. Great accountability. That's all I need.
Yes, you will. I'll hold you. I'm writing notes right now.
Oh, jeez. All right, here we go. All right, Mike. Thank you so much for the podcast, and no thank you for the challenge, but I'll do it. All right, and the last thank you, of course, goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for listening to the Rewire and Retire podcast with Mike Guarino. Before I finish this closing, though, I do want to ask Mike one more question. Mike, as people are weeding through all the comedy today and the very interesting stories, they're thinking, wow, okay, I could use a professional's help. I should probably reach out, which I agree 100%. How do they get a hold of you?
Sure, a couple ways. Just you can email me at mike3@guarinowealth.com. That's spelled Guarino wealth.com. And the Mike 3 is just the number 3, MIKE number 3. That's one way, or the office number, 973-625-1112, and number 3 will get you right to my desk.
Fantastic. And another way to hear Mike more often is to subscribe to the podcast. So please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Mike comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Guarino Wealth Management, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on the Rewire and Retire podcast. If you want to learn more about how we can help troubleshoot your financial and retirement strategies, click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Guarino Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Investing involves risk, including loss of principal. There is no guarantee that a diversified portfolio will enhance overall returns or outperform a non-diversified portfolio. Diversification does not protect against market risk. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA/SIPC.